Hello, my lovelies. Welcome back to the podcast. If you're watching a video, you will know that I am actually dressed in winter clothes because yes, I'm back in Sydney, Australia, and it is freaking freezing. I'm also a little bit nasally and congested, but what's new? This is me. I have intense sinus issues and they just flare up a lot during weather change or cold weather, of course. So we're going to try to deal with it and power through it because I have a very important topic I want to talk to you guys about and you're going to love it. But just a quick update on my life since coming back home. Obviously, a lot of people have been asking me, like, Nicole, have you felt shocked or overwhelmed by the fact that you're back home? How has it been in the transition? For me personally, like, other than the weather, the main thing that I was just really working through in the first week since my arrival was my living situation. Like I told you guys on the podcast, I literally did not know where I was going to stay when I landed in Sydney because, of course, I have family, but I don't have a room and don't have a place. All my stuff is in storage. And my family house is filled with boarders because we've rented out basically the entire house. And yeah, and so I was just calling out to the universe, like, where am I going to stay? Surprisingly, my relative who lives in a really ideal, convenient location said that she has a room that is now available, which before I left, it wasn't available. So it wasn't even an option. And so I was just so thrilled because it was within the budget that I had. And this is a very, very affordable place. And I don't know where else I would be paying this price for the location I'm staying. So it's just such a beautiful example, if you want to call it that way, of how divine provision works and how the universe will just provide you every single thing you need as long as you just keep staying the path and you keep showing up for the things you're called to do. Like, I was tempted to worry about where I was going to stay and what was going to happen and how I was going to make ends meet. There was just a lot there. But you know what? It always ends up working out. You just have to, like, hang on in faith a little longer. On the other side of that, I have also a very important update. I feel like for a period of time, I really struggled with this, but I feel like I need to shine the light on it and share it with you guys because it might actually encourage someone out there. And basically, I have decided that I'm going to be taking part time work in this period of my life. So, as you know, I've been full time in my business for like the last 3 years. And I have on multiple occasions been considering that I should take a part time job just to, like, create more consistency in my income, in my business, and to be able to accelerate what I can save and income flow, basically. But I was so hesitant to it because I had so many negative associations to going back to work or to taking a part time job. And I know that those of you in business will totally understand this, but I was just avoiding and delaying it and just saying, like, if I go back, that's a step backwards, right? And then something clicked in me when I was traveling where I was like, I really do not care, like, what I need to do to create the lifestyle I want, the values-based lifestyle, the freedom-based business I want to create. I really don't care what it's going to take of me to create that if I know that it's guaranteed, right? And I feel like that's when I really detached my negative associations to taking on more work or part-time work. And look, on the other end of things, I could decide that I'm not going to take any more part-time work and just work harder on my business, work more purposefully in my business. But the cost for me was the emotional strain of, like, financial stress, because I have to be realistic. There are things that I need to pay, things that I want to pay off quicker, like my car, and to be able to have more money that I can spend on things I love, things I value, and to not feel like I'm always just waiting. And while my business income was and is consistent, it's not where I want it to be. And I think for a long time, I made it a problem if I had to get other work because I associated getting other work to failure and taking a step back. But when I viewed it as actually taking a part-time job doesn't have to take away from my energy, my time, or my focus on my business, because I can just learn to work on my business more efficiently. I can learn to actually time manage better. I can begin to sift out all the extra fluffy activities that I'm just doing to fill my time, to feel like I'm making progress and actually do the hard work, while being able to create income on the side that allows me to remove the stress or the pressure that I place on my business financially. I feel like a lot of the stress that comes from from our businesses are very much financial. And in the beginning, when you're a startup and you're expecting your business to like skyrocket right away, or you're even if you're in your first like 1 to 3 to 5 years, you're still figuring it out. You're probably pivoting still. And when you're pivoting, you're probably not scaling and creating consistent income to the degree that you'd like or you're capable of. So for me, I kind of just came to terms with the fact that, hey, I've pivoted like multiple times in the past few years. I've introduced new products, I've been in the creation process, and I've been spending what I make on things I want and taking risks with my money. And that is all great. Like I had no resentment or negativity or regret around it. It was really just like this moment of taking responsibility that if I wanted to have this lifestyle in the coming 6 months where I could really accelerate being able to pack up my things and just travel for a full year, then I was going to do whatever it took. And I wasn't going to attach a negative story to decisions that would actually serve me having the lifestyle I want. And I feel like ever since having made that decision and actually starting the part-time work, I've actually felt so good about how I'm making this money. I'm still working with clients, I'm still working on my business, and then at the same time, I'm still doing part-time work. And just that extra few hours somewhere else and the extra income coming in helps me to just like alleviate the pressure and the stress that I would normally place on myself or on my business to have to create an instant result. It allows me to focus on like my product and developing my product well and taking my time to really deliver to clients and really build out my systems properly instead of rushing and money being the end goal because I'm trying to survive in the world, you know? Anyway, I could do a whole ass podcast on this. I know I haven't talked business much on this podcast because I have been on a little surrender experiment, but I will very, very soon, especially as we lean into flow-based business and the launch of my Freedom in Flow business program. You guys are not ready. So let's talk about creating results and why it seems like we keep getting the same results over and over again, no matter how hard we try. In this episode, I'm going to share with you a concept of paradigms, principles, and your thoughts and beliefs. So we're going to explore why we keep creating the same results over and over again through the lens of these layers that make up our lived experience. Now, I thought about sharing this because as a life coach and even as a business coach, I have seen so many people try to create certain results in their life and in their businesses and spend so much money and do things that are just so odd in order to create a different result, only to fall back and have the same pattern, the same outcome happen over and over again, just in different ways, in different dresses, in different, you know, manifestations. And this happens a lot, like in a personal sense, this happens in people's relationships. They end up with the same guy over and over and over again. Or it happens in our finances. We end up with the same amount of income over and over again, no matter how much income we make, no matter how much we try to save or budget, we always end up having the same amount in our bank account or the same amount of debt lying around no matter what. So this is how we know that we are in a loop or in a pattern or a cycle. And I think that how we do one thing is always how we do everything else, right? So if you have a pattern that is not serving you, that is creating a certain result you don't want in one area, it's likely going to be a very similar or the same pattern of thinking that's creating the other result that you don't want in your life right now. I'm going to give you some examples during this episode, but let's start with the the overall theme, the overall way to look at this, right? So, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term paradigm. If you've listened to any or read any of Bob Proctor's work, you'll know that it's essentially the set of beliefs and habitual actions and way of doing things that inform the way you view your world. So, our paradigm is essentially a lens through which we view the world and we live from, meaning we make decisions from that paradigm. We believe everything to be true based on the paradigm, the beliefs and the actions and the results that we always create within that bubble. I like to think of it like it's a bubble. And the thing is, everybody has their own paradigm that they live under because each person's paradigm is informed by different beliefs and different actions. What reinforces our paradigm, what reinforces this bubble that we live in, are the principles that we hold to be true that basically support that bubble continuing to exist. Have you ever met somebody? This happens a lot when you travel because you're exposed to people who think differently, who live differently, and you just feel like they are living in an entirely different world from you. They see things differently to you. They think differently. They talk differently. Their jobs are different. The way they make money is different. The way they raise their family is different. And it just kind of, you get this experience of either you realize how different you are or your bubble is burst because you're like, damn, there's so many more ways to live life than I thought. And this is why I love travel, and this is why I would always recommend for you to travel and get out there and interact with people who are so different from you, because it's so important for you to burst your bubble. Paradigms aren't inherently bad or wrong, but we have to understand that paradigms do shape and drive everything we do. And if at some point in your life, your paradigm is no longer serving you because you've outgrown it, or you have decided consciously that you don't value certain things that your initial conditioning told you to value, but you haven't checked in on the paradigm you're living for or the principles that uphold that paradigm, then you're going to be creating the same result even though you don't want to be creating that result. It's because in your mind you've still got that lens, that mental lens of how the world needs to be, how the world should be. And so with that being said, let's talk about principles. Principles, when you think about that word in its essence, I mean, I'm just going to put my own definition on it, but principles in essence are all about inevitability. It's all about what is, right? It's a plant a seed, and if you water it, it will grow. Or what goes up must come down, right? There are principles for basically everything. There are laws of how life works. Now, in this sense of what we're talking about here when it comes to creating results, our principles are essentially made up of thoughts, okay? And the thoughts that we think over and over and over again until we believe they are true and a matter of fact are essentially our beliefs. And we have a range of these thoughts that we believe to be true, and these make up our core belief systems. These core belief systems sometimes are consciously formed. We decide to believe differently, to think differently. But most of the time, our subconscious has its own set of beliefs from childhood, from conditioning, from culture, from religion, from schooling, early childhood, relationships, trauma. There's a whole ass list. What you have to understand is that your principles are made up of those core beliefs. And when something is a belief, it really feels absolutely inescapably true. It feels unchangeable, and it feels so true and matter-of-factly that you walk around in your life like everybody sees it this way, that everybody thinks this way. And anybody who challenges it, you might be offended or defensive. How our beliefs manifest in real life is through principles. So let me give you an example, right? Money is hard to make is a thought that you may have been conditioned to think. You may have learned this by seeing your parents struggle to make money growing up. Money was always hard to make. Now, unintentionally, that thought maybe became a belief because it started to become a truth to you. It's starting to be like, well, nobody else makes money with ease, so surely it must be true that money is always hard to make. And now if I want to make money, then it must be hard. That is when it becomes a principle. It becomes a law in which you live your life under, as if it is the only truth. And guess what? When you believe a principle, when you hold a principle, the principle dictates results and how results will be created. When this principle is what creates your paradigm around money, aka the lens in which you view and interact with money in your life, it's going to feel very true. It's going to feel like money is just always going to be hard to make. This is how the principle upholds the paradigm. So it looks like every job you get will inevitably feel really difficult to do. If you have a business, you'll self-sabotage and drive away opportunities to make more money with ease because it seems dodgy or too good to be true when somebody wants to pay you a lot of money and they recognize how great you are at your craft and they have no objections. In your sales, you will expect objections every time, and you will cap yourself in your ability to sell seamlessly and effortlessly and confidently. You might unconsciously restrict yourself from receiving more income streams or more efficient income that doesn't require hard work. You'll inevitably choose the difficult path when it comes to making money, or you'll try to like DIY everything, or you might choose to just do it the hard way. I don't know why. You would just have that experience where it always feels really difficult because it seems more safe and reliable. And you might struggle to believe that people actually want to pay you, so you get into convincing, graspy energy in your business, and it actually maybe drives away clients instead of being really calm and chill and just receiving the money. This happens all the time, especially for me, I grew up in a household where money was hard to make, and this was my paradigm. I had no modeling of anything that could be remotely possible outside of that paradigm. There was no one in my world showing me that I could make money and only be working 4 hours a day, or showing me that the only way to make income was to do a job that wasn't labor inducing or really exhaustive. All throughout my life, I had been around people who had perpetuated this paradigm and lived under principles of money is always hard to make. And I feel like it's so important to recognize that as adults, especially when you are stepping into your embodiment of your fullest and most authentic and highest self, we have to recognize that we may be living by patterns that have been hardwired into us by our parents, cultural beliefs, past experiences that have just now gone unchecked. And we're working so hard to create different results in our life only to be making so little progress because we're not recognizing that these principles that we have been so used to living our lives from are no longer serving us. And unconsciously, they are perpetuating this lived experience of the things that we don't want. What these principles are doing when they are not checked on or managed is they perpetuate an unwanted reality. And if your paradigm is what it is because of the beliefs that uphold it or the principles that uphold it, then we need to always be auditing our prominent beliefs, especially the ones that are unconscious to us. And how you can do that is by literally asking yourself every day or once a week to clean out your brain with your primary beliefs about each area of your life. In my Embody program, I actually got my girls to do a life wheel. The life wheel, if you just Google it right now, you'll find that it has 8 different categories. And for each category of your life, you could just write down what are my topmost 3 thoughts or beliefs about these areas of my life right now. And if you just audit once a week or once every day, the topmost 3 beliefs, you'll find that your most recurring ones are probably ones that you've had your whole life. And if it doesn't serve you, if it's not creating the result that you want, then it's likely because you have outgrown it and it's time to shift it. Okay? So now on to my next point. Let's talk about values. You guys hear me talk a lot about a values-based life. And so where does values come in when you're trying to steer yourself towards creating a different result and changing up your paradigm? Well, your values essentially directly influence your principles. See, when you know what you value, it's much easier for you to stick to your principles. So you'll not feel the need to conform or bend your way to doing things a different way or impressing somebody else if you are clear on what you value. Because what you value comes with its own set of instructions, basically, right? And these instructions are intrinsic. They're going to look different for every person expressed. Because if you can just identify what values you have, for example, a lifestyle where you work efficiently and not exhaustively, then your decisions, your actions, your emotions will just follow. Of course, it's not necessarily going to be easy or effortless, but as in they will just be obvious, is what I mean. So, for example, let's say your principle was efficient work is better than hard work. Working efficiently means leveraging my strengths and outsourcing and delegating what isn't. This is how you create results faster. Notice how both principles, they do value the same end goal, which is to create results faster, but the value system is different. The value system says for the first one, hard work and hustle and like grinding it out. The second one says I value my rest, I value delegating, I value leveraging my strengths and recognizing where my areas of strength and weakness are and working with them. Both are going to create faster results, but which one is more sustainable? I meet a lot of people who are like, I value rest and not hustle. And yet, there is little to no effort in actually upholding the value. So, if you're really clear on your value and you are committed to upholding it, then the principles will make themselves known and they will feel like directions, like a map for you to know where to go and how to guide your steps. See, the principle of hard work is the only way to create results faster. And hard work means being the first in, last out, working when nobody else is, working so hard that you're exhausted. That principle, if that's the principle you're operating under, then the set of actions, behaviors, beliefs that will naturally come with it is pushing yourself to work, come in earlier than everybody else. You would feel guilty if you left work early. And I've seen this a lot. I've seen this in my partner in his workplace and seeing how maybe his workplace unintentionally or intentionally, I don't know, honors principles of hard work and being like on the floor and grinding it out. And there's a culture, especially in the fitness industry, I feel like, or even in the creative industry, there's this idea that like, people who are tradespeople need to work extra hard to make more money. And so there's those cultural, societal things as well. But there's also like circumstantial, situational, where certain workplaces perpetuate this without like, and we kind of just, when we don't think about it, we kind of just do it. We believe that that's the only way. But the point of this is to realize that this is not the only way. That's the whole point of this episode. And when it comes to a values-led life, that's essentially what you're doing. You are mindful of the sustainability of what you are doing and what you are creating. You become aware when you really let yourself live by your values and let them shape your principles and the paradigm of life you live in. You recognize that sure, this other approach may allow me to create the result I want, but is it going to let me create it over and over and over again with more ease? In a values-based life, you're making choices like, I got to stop doing that because if I want to do this in the long term, then I got to make a change. This path is not going to be sustainable. If you're always cramming for an exam, there will only be a certain point in your life where you can keep doing that. There's going to be a point where you're going to have a lot of things on your plate that you can't just cram for things that you need to meet a deadline on. You need to learn how to time manage. You need to learn how to prioritize instead of just using cramming as a strategy. And yet so many of us are like haven't even checked in on that. We in high school we crammed to get things done, to get the degree or to get the pass, but in adulthood we're realizing like, why can't we create the results we want? Because cramming is just not a principle that's going to serve you or the reality that you want to create. Okay, let's talk about the final point. There are no right or wrong principles. Okay, so just like values, there's nobody that can tell you that this value is wrong or this value is not for you or it's not good. They're all neutral. Same thing with principles. Many people ask me questions like, if I do this, then will this happen? Is this guaranteed to happen? But there's no right answer. Everything really is subjective. If I believe my answer or my way of life or my paradigm, my principles are the formula for every single person and tell you to live them, you're just going to see that it doesn't work the same way because you have an entirely different life experience. So you cannot look to other people. You have to look internally. If I went and told you these are the set of principles to live the best life, and this is the paradigm it's going to create, this is the exact result it's going to create, I'm not acknowledging that you have different circumstances, you have different thoughts, you have different subconscious history, you have things going on inside you that I am not aware of. And so my principles, my paradigm may not work for you, right? And this is why it's so important to be intentional, to slow down, to be with yourself so that you are aware of how to create your own freedom-based life, right? If I tell you that my way is the highway, as a coach, I'm denying you of your freedom to think for yourself and the power that comes from that. Let yourself uncover what is authentic for you. Let yourself guide yourself. Okay? This is not about, making anyone wrong either. Like a lot of people in our day and age, especially with TikTok and the polarity that we have out there, people want to be right, but I personally feel like it's just a waste of energy to try to convince people that you are right. I would rather you just share what you believe and let the people who believe with you come. It is such a waste of time to be keyboard warriors and just be fighting about who's right or wrong, because it's not really about that, right? Our freedom lies in our ability, our personal ability to shape our personal worlds. Our paradigms are never going to line up to another person's paradigm because we are filled with an entirely different makeup of beliefs, of stories, of experiences, and preferences. So just know that you are always capable of changing and shaping your own paradigms through the thoughts that you choose to think, the beliefs you choose to have, whether unintentional or intentional. Be so clear on what is guiding and directing your life, what principles are sitting in the driver's seat of your life. Okay? Coming from a strong Christian background, I really learned to think in a very black and white way, where there was a set of principles that were essentially handed to me. Now, obviously being an adult, I understand that these things are still open to interpretation. You can take the same principles and still adapt them to your own principles. But I'm also understanding that, it's never about labels either. When we make our life and our existence about labels, we lose the point. We lose the beauty of what it means to be human and to live this life. So I want to leave with you this thought. What if you could live in alignment to what you value? And that is how you access the fullness of your life, your unique existence. Who am I, or who is anyone to tell you what is the right way? There is no right or wrong way. I just think we get to choose, and then we get to take responsibility. So if principles always have an effect or a result, then we just have to understand that whatever principle we're living by will always inevitably create a result. Whether or not we like it, we have to take responsibility for it if that's the principle we're living under. We cannot spend our energy shaming or blaming or polarizing anybody else. We just got to live in our own lane. And you need to be so busy, loving your life, living in the paradigm that you are so excited to have created for yourself, that liberates you, that you don't even have time to judge or project onto anybody else. If you do find yourself holding judgment towards somebody else or how someone else is living your life, I take that as a personal invitation from myself that this thing that triggers me so much is something I need to explore. Maybe they have a quality that I deeply desire, or they have a relationship with themselves, a sense of freedom, a sense of sensuality that I don't have yet with myself, and maybe that's why it's triggering for me. So it's always helpful as well to notice how other people's paradigms, principles, values challenge you. If they don't line up with yours, it's not about convincing them out of theirs, but it's just about letting that be a mirror to let yourself reflect back to you, to ask yourself, well, how else can I live a more fuller life? So I want to end on this. I think that we all have such an incredible power within us to make decisions, to guide ourselves towards the best possible version of ourselves and the most expansive version of life. But as you hear me talk about all these incredible things that you could be doing and ways that you could be growing, I want you to know that this is not at the expense of despising where you are right now. I've been saying this over and over again as we kick off the first round of the Embody program with my girls. And I've been telling them, like, at the end of the day, we have to learn to love where we are now and fully embrace who we are now in order to access this next version of us. We cannot be that version of us if we are despising or not loving who we are and where we are right now. So it's so important that you don't look at this as a way to like audit your life and then hate what you have and who you are and who raised you and why you were raised that way, but to really use it as a window of self-care and as an invitation to love yourself and know yourself deeper. When you go at it from that way, it really is an enjoyable process. It doesn't elicit this feeling of like I'm a failure, or I don't know what I'm doing with my life, or how do I change this? I feel really helpless now that I'm living under these paradigms. The point is not to make you feel like a victim. The point is for you to be able to live in the freedom of knowing that you have choice and awareness, and stepping back to become aware is the most powerful thing. The next step is knowing what to do next with that awareness and how to steer yourself in the right ways. And if that's you, please reach out to me. That's what Embody, my new program, is all about. We have just kicked off the first round, but enrollments for the second round coming in September is opening up very soon. And we have decided that we are capping it to 6 people max, because the program is just incredibly powerful when it is intimate and when every person in the room gets their time to shine and the light to share what they need to share. So we're keeping it intimate, we're keeping the space very sacred, and the transformations in this program have been unreal, and it's only week 2. There have been tears, laughter, connections, vulnerability. It's just incredible. Everything I could have wished for in a life coaching program. I'm obsessed with it. Okay, my loves, I hope this episode really challenged you and that it changed you for the better, and I'll catch you next week. Bye.